Hi.
Okay, first of all, I would like to mention a thank you to PDG Vivian Krimble and Herb Reinhardt for help and assistance on getting me started on this path. And Mike and Diane, you all have been so helpful, and I'm so appreciative of all of your help and input. And I would be remiss in not mentioning PDG's Mary Keeley and Ron Farrell and the work they've done with stewardship. And with that said, uh, folks that are participants today, this is my first time ever of taking on this role. And my entire committee that I've put together, we're all brand new at this. So please bear with us as we learn what we need to do so we can best help you folks. So with that said, we'll begin the presentation. Basically, stewardship is the ethics of responsible planning and management of resources. And that's one of the things that we are bound to do since we are working with the funds that have been put into the RI Foundation from so many people and clubs from our district. Okay, now Mike, let's see. Let me make sure I can advance my slides here. Whoops. Okay, here's our committee that we have with contact information. And for this year, for us starting out, each committee member has been assigned about 3 or 4 of the grants, which we will be working directly with those grant people who are the contacts for this year. And if that works well, we'll follow that same strategy for next year's grant cycle also. But here is an email address for each of our committee members at this current time. Okay, what are our responsibilities to the grantees? Basically, what we need to do from a stewardship standpoint is help avoid and resolve any type of irregularity, misuse, or conflicts of interest, answering any questions you may have about your grants. But as you see, Mike and Diane are very, very knowledgeable and probably much more versed at this point in time in answering questions or clarifying any questions that you may have. Our job is to verify that your grant plan was followed and basically to review and verify your club expenditures, your grant allocations. And we do need, whenever you submit your progress and your final reports, for you to show receipts, invoices, and your proofs of payment. And you can scan those into the emails and put them into the templates so we can view them. And then after we do that, we are given the charge of completing RI reports as they apply to all of the grants. And the process we go through is called closing grants. And just as soon as you can get a final report completed and all your documentation, it would be very, very helpful if you can go ahead and not wait until late May or mid-May when that's due. If you can get that done as quickly as possible once you get everything finished. And one item that's very important is that all of the grants must be closed with RI before we can apply for funding for the next grant cycle. So the quicker you are at getting things completed and the quicker we are at getting things closed, then that makes it much easier for our grants committee to do what they need to do moving forward into the next year. What the grantees' responsibilities back toward us are is to follow and implement your grant plan and guidelines, maintain and provide records of your expenditures, your receipts, your invoices, proofs of payment, complete the required reports and the documentations by the deadlines, and we'll try to help clarify and resolve any questions that you may have between the Stewardship Committee and the Grants Committee and you. We can all work together to help look at any questions you may have or anything like that to resolve any issues, because we do want to make sure we follow guidelines so our funding is not impeded by anything like that. Also, we understand that life does happen and you may have some deviation from your original plan. There might be lots of different factors that could come in to your plan and cause a deviation from what you have initially set out to do and what the grants committee has approved. So if you do have any deviations or any problems, please, please notify us as soon as possible. And that way we can work together as a team between you guys, your clubs, the Grants Committee, and the Stewardship Committee to resolve any problems or difficulties that you may have. And occasionally we do understand things like that will develop. That's totally out of your control. But we will look at each grant on a case-by-case basis if you have a situation, and we'll do our very best to come up with something that is a workable, viable solution. Okay, why is stewardship important? We do have district established and RI established guidelines that we are expected to follow. These guidelines apply to each of the grants, and we do need to provide accountability for our expenditure of the district grant funds. And we want to make sure that we have uniform treatment toward all of the grants and the clubs and all the individuals involved. Here again, our responsibilities, just as a quick recap, we want to work with the Grants Committee and to work with the grant, the clubs, the grant recipients, to make sure that our management practices are followed, our reporting, we want to monitor and evaluate the grant management, and we want to perform reviews on the open global grants and notify clubs regarding reporting deadlines. Of course, you have those dates here in the PowerPoint, but we do want to try to work together throughout this process. We want to help qualify clubs and assist with grant management seminars. We'll be helping with those. We want to ensure that each person involved with the grant avoids any type of conflict of interest. And Diane did a great job of putting the thou shalt nots together. So long as you follow those, we should all be in good order on those type of things. And here again, we want to develop a procedure to resolve any misuse or irregularity or any problem or question you may have. We want to avoid a problem early in the process, if at all possible. And please don't think of us as the Rotary police, but we are the guardian angels of the grant process, and we do want to help make things run as seamless and as smoothly for all involved. Here again, we review progress reports, and kind of, if you think about the Grants Committee as getting everything approved and started, we're kind of standing in the wings waiting, and then once the progress reports begin to come in and your final reports, as you get those completed, then the Grants Committee kind of stands in the wings and we kind of take over the check and balances system. But please make sure that all of your receipts are included on your listed expenditures. Verify that your financial contribution is at least 50% of your total cost, and accurately complete the financial report and complete all the questions in the grant process or the final report. So provide your documentation to us. And deadlines are so important so we can address any problems immediately. Clubs with delinquent reports. Now, this is something very important as per the guidelines. If you have not finished your reports or they've not been closed by the Stewardship Committee, your final grants, your club is not eligible to apply for a new grant the following year. And we don't want that happening to you. We want to get everything closed out. Also, we don't have to wait until the deadline. As soon as your project is completed, and I noticed looking over this year's grants, several of them were scheduled to be completed by probably this time of the year. So if you are involved in any of the grants of this current cycle, as soon as you get them finalized and all of your documentation, you can go ahead and submit those in your final report. You don't have to wait, and we can work on the closing process immediately. And once again, all of the grants must be closed before our district can even apply for funding. So we want to do things in a timely manner so we can all work together and be as effective and efficient and help more people in the world. Accountability. Remember, that's the whole reason for the stewardship. We are accountable for the funds that we have been allotted, and your club and your financial advisor and your grant project manager. They're the ones that are actually controlling what happens with your grants. So you've got a lot of responsibility and accountability, but we want to work together to help you fulfill those roles. And have your documentation for that. And here again, it's just mentioning what your final results report needs to include before we can actually close it once we do our previews and reviews of your final reports. And for this new grant cycle, the mid-May, 15th of May, 2021, or like I said, as soon as your documentation is completed, we'll take it earlier. We don't have to wait till the deadline. And if you have a situation where you think your project will not be completed by the date, please contact me or whoever the grant person assigned for whoever the stewardship person assigned for your grant committee is, and we will, like I say, work together on a case-by-case basis to resolve any concerns or issues. Okay, this just mentions some deadlines, and I'm not going to go over those. You can refer back to the slides for those. And we have some great grant success stories. Be innovative with your grant. Share the fun with others. And please communicate any problems as soon as possible. Because if you're very involved in your grant, you're going to know by this time of the year how things are rolling along. So like I said, we want to help you and work together to resolve any type of question or situation that you may have. And thank you for your dedication and helping others. And thank you so much for your service above self. And that's it for my part of the presentation.
Jennifer, I think there's a question. I don't know if you can see it.
How do we find out if our club has any delinquent past reports? Okay. Like a past report for this current grant, well, I guess the only reports that you would actually have to date would be nothing except the end of January progress report that's due here coming up in a couple of weeks for these. And the Stewardship Committee and I guess the Grants Committee would work together. If your report is not submitted online, we would reach out and let you know, hey, you're missing a report that's not been turned in. I guess that's the way that would work. Am I correct, Diane?
Yes, and I think if the person is asking about past years, this would have come to the forefront in last May. So you can assume that if no one has contacted you, that you don't have any delinquent reports.
Okay, I see a clarifier here regarding delinquent reports. Only wondering about prior years. No, if there would have been any in prior years, that would have been addressed in the past, as far as I understand.
Right. Right. It is absolutely correct that we can't apply for next year's district grant to fund the next grant cycle unless all of the reports are in. So,
and I think if we were prohibiting a club from applying for funding, that club would absolutely know.
Right. Right.
They would have received notification from somebody in the past. Yes.
And I would like, I think this might be a good time just to mention the progress reports on all of our grants are due the end of this month. So those of you participating, if you would, some of you may be involved in the current grant, but it would be great to just make sure that the proper person in your club is aware that or remind them that progress reports are due at the end of the month.
Right, and I looked over all of the grants for this current grant cycle, and I think almost half of the ones for this current cycle, according to the plan that was projected, should maybe about half of those be completed by this time of the year. So in addition to a progress, the final report could go ahead and be submitted just ASAP also. And we can go ahead and be looking at those and communicating back to the clubs in regards to this year's grant cycle.
Well, I think that will conclude our webinar. We appreciate the questions, appreciate everyone's attendance, and we will try to get a video of this and the slideshow up by the end of the month. Please feel free to contact any of us by email, and unless there's something else, we will conclude. So thank you so much for your attendance today. Anything, Diane? Jennifer?
No, nothing for me.
I'm fine.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to end the meeting. And have a great weekend. Thank you.